Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know the drill, you point us to interesting stuff, and we try to pull out what really matters. Today, we're looking at something a little different, actually. It's an announcement about a podcast. BlockDAGs launched their own series.
That's right, the BlockDAG Podcast series. So the source is BlockDAG themselves talking about their show.
And our mission, basically, is to figure out what's the goal here? What are they covering? And what does this whole thing signal about their approach to Web3?
Exactly. What can we learn about them from how they're choosing to communicate?
Okay, let's unpack this then. So right away, BlockDAG seems to be saying they weren't really satisfied with the usual crypto project communication.
Yeah, they mentioned things like white papers that, let's be honest, not many people read cover to cover.
Right, or those official updates that can sometimes feel a bit sanitized,
a bit
too corporate.
Exactly. And it's interesting because this communication gap is a real thing in crypto. Lots of projects stick to those static docs or, very polished announcements.
So BlockDAG is positioning this podcast differently.
Yeah, they're pitching it as more direct, real talk, they call it, with the actual builders. It's a trend, this more conversational approach. But success varies. Some build real trust this way.
Others maybe struggle with the consistency or keeping it genuinely open.
Precisely. So BlockDAG wants to offer a backstage pass, they say, to building a layer 1 blockchain.
Okay, and just quickly, for anyone maybe newer to this, layer 1, that's the fundamental blockchain network itself, the base layer.
Correct, the foundation. So showing the nuts and bolts, not just the shiny end result.
And they're even talking about sharing their blueprint publicly.
Which sounds like a push for, pretty high transparency. It could be smart for building conviction with users, with investors.
So what's been behind the curtain so far? What are these early episodes showing us? One was with Adolfo Fabrica from Panama's Authority of Innovation. Panama.
Yeah, why Panama? That's a good question. Apparently, the episode looks into why Panama is becoming sort of a hotspot for Web3 stuff.
A Web3 hub.
Right, like Switzerland or Singapore. Maybe Panama's putting friendly rules in place or just encouraging development. That matters for new projects starting out.
Okay, so it's looking at how this tech meets the real world, government interactions, that kind of thing.
Seems like it. Showing that alignment between government and the blockchain folks.
Then they had the Betsky team on. Another partnership discussion, but framed as a conversation, not just a news blast.
Exactly. And the focus was why Betsky, which is a gaming platform, picked BlockDAG.
What?
They apparently talked about how they're using it to change up, ownership of things in games. Digital ownership models.
So developers talking to developers.
Yeah.
Strategy, scale, the vision behind it.
Yeah, getting into the practical side, the strategic thinking in that specific industry, gaming.
Right, seeing the tech actually do something. And then the BlockDAG Roadmap Unfiltered episode with their own core team. Sounds pretty direct.
Yeah, and they supposedly covered some specifics. They mentioned hitting $225 million raised and getting over 200,000 holders, which, suggests some serious community traction.
Okay.
They also brought up their CertiK audit. That's a security check, basically. A third party looks for bugs in the code. Crucial for trust.
Definitely need that.
And they touched on the upcoming exchange launch. That's always a big step for making the token easier to buy and sell.
And they talked about challenges, too. Avoiding pitfalls.
Yeah, navigating the hard parts, staying ahead on scalability, making sure the network can handle lots of transactions, and just general performance.
And the framing is interesting. Working sessions made public, not just marketing.
It's a deliberate choice, yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to show the process, warts and all, maybe. It taps into that demand for more, realness from projects.
Which kind of feeds into their bigger philosophy, it sounds like. They think the crypto world in 2025 is shifting.
Yeah, moving away from just passive investing towards an active community being really central.
And the podcast is their tool for that.
Seems to be a key part of it. They want to use it for clarity, showing how partnerships work, having, quote, honest discussions, and building that real connection.
Contrasting themselves with projects that maybe ask for money before you really get what they're doing.
Right. Their argument seems to be, if the community is informed, understands the vision, understands the challenges, then the whole network is stronger. Better long-term value.
So the podcast builds that informed community, that foundation.
That's the idea they're putting forward. Foster understanding, foster engagement, get a more resilient ecosystem out of it.
Okay, so what's next for the podcast? Have they hinted at future topics?
They have, yeah. They're talking about more technical deep dives, things like scalability, security features, different use cases for BlockDAG.
Breaking down the complex stuff, hopefully.
Hopefully in an accessible way, maybe using analogies, like you said, comparing network speeds to highways, that kind of thing.
That'd be useful. What else?
Partner spotlights showing how BlockDAG integrates with other projects. That gives you a sense of where they fit in the bigger Web3 picture.
Okay, seeing the connections?
Yep. And market analysis from their team's perspective, plus community Q&A sessions, direct interaction.
So, direct line to the team. Their goal, they say, is to be the most authentic, valuable, and community-driven content series in crypto. Big ambition.
It's a high bar for sure.
Yeah.
But it lines up with this whole narrative of moving beyond the old ways of communicating and really trying to build an engaged audience.
And for anyone listening who wants to actually listen to their show, the announcement points to the BlockDAG official podcast and their YouTube channel.
Right. That's where you'd find these conversations.
And their closing line sums it up. We don't announce progress, we prove it.
Yeah. Positioning the podcast itself as the proof, as evidence of the work and their open approach.
They also throw in a mention of current activities, like these buyer battles and a referral leaderboard. Apparently over $1 million in their BDAG token claimed recently.
Right. Ways to get people involved, keep the ecosystem buzzing.
And they flag the current token price, P1000 V07, saying the presale price is much higher, past 0.0262N, and mention the exchange launch announcement is coming soon. Creates a bit of urgency.
Standard stuff to encourage participation, yeah. And the referral program, you get 25% in BDAG for bringing people in. Your friends get 5% back. Common growth tactic.
Okay. So wrapping up our deep dive into this BlockDAG podcast announcement, the main takeaway seems to be the strong push for transparency.
Yeah, transparency and building a really informed, involved community, using these direct conversations with the team, with partners as their main tool.
They're framing the podcast not just as content, but as kind of living proof of their progress and how they want to operate in Web3.
Which brings us to that final thought for you, the listener, thinking about BlockDAG using this podcast approach for communication. What does that suggest about their long-term plans, their commitment level? Is this kind of open book style something you think more projects in crypto should try, something to chew on?